After the dedication of Three Arch Bay County Beach in 1926, the harbor's beaches and park system saw no further or additional growth until 1948, when the ONeill family of Rancho Santa Margarita donated 256 acres for the establishment of our 5th regional recreation facility, ONeill Regional Park. And then in the 1974-75 period, the county purchased an additional 250 acres, almost doubling the size of the park, from the Vedanta Society, consisting of lands up near the Ramana Krishna Monastery. And then also in 75, 76, and 7, we purchased various private little ranchette lots along the primary entrance road to ONeill Park, Live Oak Canyon Road, thought by many to be the most beautiful road in the county because it passes under a tunnel of several miles long, consisting of California coast live oak trees. Then in 1982, I negotiated a dedication offer from the ONeill family in return for the development entitlements for the new town of Rancho Santa Margarita of a whopping 2,000-acre addition to the park, consisting primarily of this magnificent 7-mile stretch of Trabuco Creek containing what is thought to be the world's largest grove of California sycamore trees. So today, in 2005, the park consists of 3,464 acres in 96 distinct parcels. And on that distant hillside across the valley over there was the location of the last nesting site for the only breeding pair of golden eagles outside of the Cleveland National Forest. And they occupied and bred from that location, and I witnessed myself them fledging a little baby bird, throwing it out of the nest and down the cliff, teaching it how to fly, with Tony Giambroni, a former district supervisor. The birds fled the site when construction started for Rancho Santa Margarita around 1985, and as the city of Mission Viejo's development, which you can see in the distance, began to creep towards the banks of Trabuco Creek. And although most of the land in ONeill Park straddles the Arroyo Trabuco, which is one of the largest rivers in Orange County, there is another major component, which is the Chiquita Ridge, which we see here, containing about 700 acres on the east side of the town of Rancho Santa Margarita, which separates it from Coto de Caza. And now we've come down to the banks of the Arroyo Trabuco to give you a peek at the oldest structure in the park. Mission San Juan Capistrano was established by Father Serra in 1776, and as was the case with most missions in California, after they established their main headquarters, they branched out into the hinterlands and built a series of small chapels and enclaves called estancias, and in this case you're looking at the remnants of the Solana adobe, which today simply consists of the mortar and straw bricks of one corner of the building, which for years did have, thanks to the ONeill family, a shade structure over it to protect it, and a chain link fence around it to keep the cattle from bothering it. But since then, our own forces have enclosed the remnant of the building in a wooden structure to protect it until such time, hopefully in the future, when it can be restored. standing here on the largest tributary to San Juan Creek, known as Bell Creek in Bell Canyon, at Ronald W. Caspers Wilderness Park at Starr Viejo Ranch. We thought we'd just show you a little bit of the unusual park circumstances during a heavy rainfall year, because it is these extraordinary years of heavy winters where we have the most dramatic shaping of the land. Whether we're at the seashore, whether we're in the canyons, chiseling the mountains, sharpening the bluff edges, widening the creeks, tossing the boulders around. Basically, that's what we're here to see a little bit of today. In 1927, Eugene Apperson Starr and his wife purchased 10,000 acres, known as the Starr Ranch, from the ONeill family interests here in originally Rancho Mission Viejo property. They owned it and operated it essentially as a private countryside retreat. They lived in Los Angeles. He was in the oil business. They didn't do a heavy grazing, as was the case on the Irvine Ranch or on the Rancho Mission Viejo. There were just a few head of cattle, which is what enabled the preservation of this pristine understory here in this magnificent park. February 8th in 1974, the Board of Supervisors approved the purchase of 5,499 acres from the Starr Foundation to establish what was then Starr Viejo Ranch Park. I went to work here in 1975, scouting the route for the ONeill Trail along San Juan Creek. Working with the trail crew here in Bell Canyon, it was not unusual to arrive at work at 6:30 and come up into this area of the canyon near the windmill and see a flock of 30 deer just grazing with little fawns and so forth. And it was even within the first few weeks of my employment here that I saw a mother mountain lion with 2 cubs just run right by in front of me, my first of 5 sightings. Anyway, over the years, the park has grown. In 1983, we were successful in negotiating a 2,200 acre addition from the Rancho Mission Viejo Company in return for development entitlements at Santa Margarita, and there have been some additional purchases such that today the park is now approximately 8,000 acres in size. Donna is now working at Caspers Park, also worked, for example, at ONeill Park, and she's really our top-notch mountain lion expert among the ranks of the park rangers. She keeps track of where the lions are and what they're up to. We just met Donna Crookie, who's the park ranger on duty today on the 28th of February in 2005. She also works with John Ganaway and others in running the park, but I thought I'd reflect a little bit about the founding staff here. When I came to work at Caspers Park in 1975, Tony Gimbroni was the supervising park ranger, and Darrell Bennett was the groundskeeper, and Ed Williams, who later became the supervising park rangers at South Beaches, was actually the maintenance man, and we had a crew of 6 members of the trail crew. The windmill that you see here was one of the kind of structural icons, one of the few structures within this natural landscape when the county acquired what is now Caspers Park. And it was broken. Actually, it was a very modest expense to fix it, and the project was managed by Bob Young, a senior civil engineer with the then Environmental Management Agency. On April 16th, April 17th, I think, about 1976, we had the park dedication. And it became an annual event called the Caspers Open House. It was the first of the open houses. And on that particular day, we had 3 schematic alternative master plans for the park on display, with a public questionnaire to ask the citizens of the county from all 5 of the supervisorial districts whether or not they felt that the park should allow for the mining of sand and gravel in San Juan Creek. It was a very controversial issue because at the time that the Board of Supervisors voted to acquire Caspers Park, Supervisor Dietrich, the then chairman of the board, was strongly in favor of sand and gravel mining. We were able to build a strong case that 85% of the people who attended that open house, which was over 1,500 people, were opposed to the sand and gravel mining option. When the actual dedication ceremony took place, the plaque commemorating Ronald W. Caspers and the establishment of the park was first affixed to a large stone right here in this particular location of the park, near the windmill and near these barbecues. And it was quite an auspicious day because Supervisor Caspers, just a few months prior, had disappeared at sea in his yacht with, I think, 1 or 2 of his sons. The boat apparently exploded far at sea and was never found again, no traces whatsoever. However, on the dedication ceremony day, Mrs. Caspers and her remaining surviving children arrived in grand style in a white Rolls Royce and motored up Bell Canyon to this site for the unveiling of the plaque. Coincidentally, just last week I went to visit Hortense Miller at her home in Laguna Beach, which now at age 96 is beginning to experience some failing health. For those of us who know about Hortense, she donated her estate in Laguna Beach for the city's botanical garden. She's still alive as of this date of the 28th of February 2005. Pretty sharp-minded, getting a little bit forgetful, but I just wanted to reminisce with some of my experiences with Hortense Miller here at Caspers Park. She was so thrilled when the county purchased this property, and she was familiar with it because when the National Audubon Society was given the 4,000-acre donation of the Starr Ranch Audubon Sanctuary, they were somewhat reluctant to accept the ownership because they didn't think that they would have sufficient funding to operate and conduct scientific research on the property. It was Hortense Miller who donated the funds to endow the operation of the Audubon Sanctuary. And a little known fact is that her husband Oscar Miller, who was a prominent Chicago attorney, has the picnic grounds at the Audubon Sanctuary named after him. I brought Hortense here to Caspers Park in my 1969 Volkswagen Squareback. She made cucumber sandwiches. And we would motor up the Bell Canyon truck trail all the way to the Starr family ranch house in high up in Bell Canyon, which is now part of the headquarters for the Audubon Sanctuary. If I recall correctly, there were about 7 creek crossings, and we did cross Bell Creek with water probably just a little bit lower than what you saw flowing in the creek today. And we just had a wonderful time bringing her out. Back in those days, she was in her 70s, and now she's in her 90s. The plaque that I described as having been dedicated and unveiled by Mrs. Caspers and her family up in Bell Canyon was later moved here to this hilltop where we have the interpretive center. It says this park is named in honor of Ronald W. Caspers for his dedicated service to the citizens of Orange County and in gratitude for his foresight in establishing recreational opportunities for present and future generations. These efforts are exemplified by his success in acquiring the Starr Viejo Ranch as a county park. You're looking at the Nichols Research Institute, which was a 100-acre parcel that the Rancho Mission Viejo retained when they dedicated all of the land to the right of it as the 2,200 acre addition to Caspers Park in 1983. Later, Dr. Nichols purchased the property, and that's what led to the development of that particular institute here in the middle of Caspers Park. Paved road in the distance is the Rancho Carrillo Road, which leads up to the top of the Santa Ana Mountains, where there's a private inholding in the National Forest with some country homes. And we can see the San Juan Creek overtopping the crossing of the Park Road. We're looking now, panning up Bell Canyon and Bell Ridge, which separates Caspers Park from Coto de Caza. See the limestone rock outcroppings up on the ridge top. Get a good perspective of the sycamore riparian, the native grasslands, the coastal sage scrub, the oak woodland, and the chaparral in the distance. Thomas F. Riley Wilderness Park in Coto de Caza, which was initially dedicated by the Coto de Caza Corporation when they dedicated 475 acres in 1983. And it was very interesting because in those days, the park was miles and miles isolated in the midst of virgin undeveloped ranch land. And it sat alone for many, many years with no improved highways or utilities. Today, the park consists of 32 parcels of fee and easement lands totaling 637 acres.
This program is among the efforts recognized in the Lifetime Achievement Award from the President of the United States in 2015. Supplemental information on the history of the Orange County Park System is included in the California State University Fullerton Center for Oral and Public History, interview number 2061 of Eric Jessen by Joanna Brand, published in 2008.